He was the son a king obsessed over, the prince England had prayed for, the boy who was meant to secure the Tudor dynasty for a century. Henry VIII moved heaven and earth, broke with the most powerful church in the world, and executed queens just to get a male heir. And he got one, Prince Edward. He was brilliant, devout, and destined for greatness. But destiny had a much crueler plan. His end wasn't a noble death in battle or a quiet passing in his sleep. It was a slow, agonizing decay, a biological horror story that unfolded while he was still breathing, a spectacle so gruesome his own doctors were left speechless. Forget what you learned in the history books about a simple sickness. The truth of how Henry VIII's only son died is a nightmare of quack medicine, political conspiracy, and a body that turned on itself in the most horrific way imaginable. Stick around, because we're about to uncover the chilling, putrid, and almost unbelievable final days of the boy king, Edward VI. From the moment he was born on October 12, 1537, Edward was less a child and more a national symbol. England rejoiced. Bells rang across London for days, and bonfires lit up the night sky. His father, the notoriously volatile Henry VIII, was reportedly so overjoyed that he wept. After 2 decades of failed pregnancies, stillbirths, and daughters, he finally had his son, his jewel, the future of England. Edward's mother, Jane Seymour, tragically died from a post-childbirth infection just 12 days later, casting a shadow over the celebrations, but in Henry's eyes, the price was worth it. Edward was raised not just as a prince, but as the embodiment of the new Protestant England. He was given the finest tutors in the realm, men who were leaders of the Reformation. By the age of 6, he was studying Latin, Greek, and French. By 7, he was debating theology and philosophy with scholars who were astounded by his intellect. He was a prodigy, a golden boy kept in a gilded cage, protected from all harm and meticulously groomed to be the perfect king. His father doted on him, showering him with gifts and overseeing every aspect of his education. The weight of an entire kingdom, its political stability, and its religious future rested on his small shoulders. He was the answer to Henry's prayers, the living proof that the break from Rome was God's will. No one could have imagined this perfect prince was living on borrowed time. On January 28, 1547, the colossal figure of Henry VIII was dead. Suddenly, at the tender age of 9, Edward was King Edward VI. He was a child, still years away from being able to rule in his own right. The power of the throne fell to a council of regents, initially led by his uncle, Edward Seymour, the Duke of Somerset, who took the title of Lord Protector. The court became a viper's nest of ambition, with powerful men jockeying for influence over the boy king. Despite his age, Edward was no mere puppet. He took his role incredibly seriously. He attended every Privy Council meeting, diligently taking notes and occasionally offering startlingly insightful opinions. His diaries reveal a boy who was acutely aware of his divine duty. He was fiercely intelligent and even more fiercely Protestant, far more radical in his beliefs than his father had ever been. For Edward, the English Reformation hadn't gone nearly far enough. He saw it as his God-given mission to purge England of every last trace of Roman Catholicism. This wasn't just politics for him, it was a holy crusade, and he was its divinely appointed leader. Under the guidance of Protestant hardliners like Archbishop Thomas Cranmer and the later Lord Protector, John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland, Edward's reign unleashed a religious revolution. It was a systematic dismantling of centuries of tradition. Catholic Mass was outlawed and replaced by the New English Book of Common Prayer. Priests were forced to marry. Ornate church decorations stained glass windows, statues, and rood screens were smashed to pieces by iconoclasts. Altars were ripped out and replaced with simple wooden tables. This wasn't just a top-down reform, it was a cultural shockwave that was deeply unpopular in many parts of the country. But Edward was unwavering. He believed he was cleansing his kingdom of idolatry and superstition. His youthful zeal was both impressive and terrifying. He had the conviction of a true believer, and as he grew into his teens, it became clear that when he finally came of age, he would be a king who ruled with an iron, Protestant fist. But a cough, a seemingly minor illness, would change the course of English history forever. In the spring of 1552, at the age of 14, Edward contracted what was described as a double illness, measles and smallpox. In the 16th century, this was often a death sentence. Miraculously, he survived. He returned to his public duties, appearing healthy and robust. But historians now believe this bout of sickness catastrophically weakened his immune system, leaving him vulnerable to the opportunistic infection that was lurking in the damp, cold palaces of Tudor England. By the end of the year, Edward was suffering from a persistent cold. He developed a hacking cough that just wouldn't go away. At first, his physicians weren't overly concerned. But as winter turned to spring in 1553, his condition took a horrifying turn. The cold had settled deep in his lungs, and it was clear this was no ordinary illness. The diagnosis, based on contemporary descriptions, is almost certainly tuberculosis, a disease they called consumption because of the way it seemed to consume the body from the inside out. As the king's health deteriorated, the royal physicians grew desperate. They subjected the young boy to the full, terrifying arsenal of Tudor medicine. They bled him, believing it would release the bad humors poisoning his body. They made him swallow vile potions made from crushed pearls, ground-up bone, and herbs, hoping one might be a miracle cure. They applied hot plasters to his chest, a practice called blistering, which caused painful burns and sores, believing it would draw the sickness out. When the royal doctors failed to produce results, a new physician was brought in, a woman who promised a radical, restorative cure. Her treatments were even more extreme. She fed him a cocktail of arsenic and other poisons, believing that in small doses, they would shock the body back to health. Instead of curing him, these remedies likely accelerated his decline, destroying his liver and kidneys and adding chemical poisoning to his already ravaged body. The boy was being tortured in the name of medicine. As Edward weakened, a political storm was brewing. The man who now held the real power in England was John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland. And he had a massive problem. According to Henry VIII's will, the next in line to the throne was Edward's half-sister, Mary. But Mary was a devout Catholic. Her ascension would mean the complete reversal of the Protestant Reformation and, for Northumberland and his allies, it would almost certainly mean a trip to the executioner's block. In a desperate gamble, Northumberland convinced the dying Edward to write a new will. In a document titled My Devise for the Succession, Edward, guided by Dudley, disinherited both of his sisters, Mary and Elizabeth, claiming they were illegitimate. He instead named his cousin, the Protestant Lady Jane Grey, as his successor. To seal the deal, Northumberland married his own son off to Jane. It was a brazen, treasonous coup, all resting on the hope that a 15-year-old girl could hold the throne against the rightful heir. By June 1553, the king's condition had become a spectacle of pure body horror. His consumption had entered its final, gruesome phase. The disease was literally eating him alive. Imperial Ambassador Jean Sheaf wrote detailed, horrifying reports back to his masters in Europe. He described how the king's body began to swell, particularly his legs and arms, a sign of massive organ failure. His skin turned a sickly greenish-black color. His breathing became a shallow, gurgling struggle for air. The cough that started it all was now producing thick, foul-smelling, greenish-yellow sputum, likely mixed with blood from his decaying lungs. His hair began to fall out in clumps, and his fingernails and toenails fell off. Sores opened up on his skin that refused to heal. He was in constant pain, and the stench of sickness and decay that surrounded him was reportedly so overwhelming that it was difficult to even be in the same room. He was a living corpse, a rotting boy on a royal bed, a grotesque mockery of the golden prince he once was. On the evening of July 6, 1553, the end finally came. Edward was at Greenwich Palace, his body little more than a skeleton draped in discolored skin. He knew he was dying. According to John Fox's Book of Martyrs, his last moments were spent in prayer. He was overheard by an attendant, his voice a faint whisper, praying not for himself, but for his kingdom. "O Lord God," he breathed, "defend this realm from papistry, and maintain thy true religion." He turned to his tutor, Sir Henry Sidney, embraced him, and said, "I am faint, Lord have mercy upon me, and take my spirit." And with that, the boy who was born to be England's great hope, breathed his last. He was just 15 years old. The great promise of the Tudor dynasty was dead. For 4 long days, the royal court kept the king's death a secret. His decaying body lay in his chambers at Greenwich while Northumberland raced to put his plan into action. He dispatched troops to intercept Princess Mary and proclaimed Lady Jane Grey as the new Queen of England. But he had fatally misjudged the English people. They saw Mary, Henry VIII's firstborn child, as the rightful heir, regardless of her religion. The country rallied to her side. Northumberland's support collapsed, his coup failed, and just 9 days after being proclaimed queen, Lady Jane Grey was imprisoned in the Tower of London. She, along with Northumberland and his key supporters, would soon be executed. While all this drama unfolded, the boy at the center of it all was given a quiet, almost secret burial. Mary, now queen, granted her brother a Protestant funeral, but it was a simple affair at Westminster Abbey. He was laid to rest in an unmarked grave, a forgotten king whose legacy was immediately dismantled by the very sister he tried to disinherit. His crusade was over, and his reign became a mere footnote between the titanic reigns of his father and his sisters. What a tragic end to a life filled with so much promise. Edward VI's story is a chilling reminder of how fragile life was in the Tudor era, and how quickly the fate of a nation could change. A boy's sickness became a kingdom's crisis, leading to a gruesome death and a political coup that almost plunged England into civil war. What do you think? If Edward had lived, would England have become a permanent, hardline Protestant state? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you found this dive into the dark side of Tudor history fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more stories that the history books didn't tell you. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and share this video with anyone who loves a good historical mystery. Thanks for watching.